For some reason, it feels like to me that Texas Alter banner was just like a few days ago, but obviously it's been 3 months, and here we go again. We have another limited banner coming our way. This time around, obviously, we have Chongyue, which is, Nian's sibling, which is, our typical Chinese New Year operators, and we have Lin. Now, as per usual, I was like, okay, maybe I should make a should you pull video about why I would recommend you pull this or that operator, or why not, because we do have two operators this time, so there's might be separate, especially about Chongyue because he is limited. So we'll go through all of that. But before we go through all the details, I would actually like to give a short answer, as usual. The thing is, this actually might be a bit controversial, is that I actually wouldn't recommend most people to pull this banner. And I know it's a limited banner. Why would I recommend you guys to skip a limited banner, right? Maybe when it comes down and then if you like, I don't know, regret not pulling Chongyue, but there is reason behind all of this. Let me explain. Now, let's first go through Chongyue because he is our limited operator, so I believe most people would be most interested in him. So Chongyue is a fighter operator, just like Mountain. So typically they have really low DP to deploy, very high attack speed, meh attack, and really squishy stats in terms of HP and defense. Now, Chongyue's first talent is that when he deals normal attack to a target, there's a 23% chance for Chongyue to deal 65% more attack to that target for 2.5 seconds. At P5, that goes to 25% chance and 70% increased damage. Now, this increased damage is after the calculation, so you have to reduce the attack and then by the defense, and then that's damage, right? And then you multiply that by 65%. Also, that would also work with the skill multiplier, so the whole damage calculation is done after the skill, and then you apply the 65% or 75% damage increase, which is really good. Unless he can't even break the enemy's defense, and in that case, that wouldn't matter as much. But that really doesn't happen. Most of the time, he can actually break through enemies' defense. Now, his second talent is that when Chongyue kills an enemy or several enemies, at least one enemy, on the release of his skill, so with his skill, he will recover 3 SP. So it's a very simplistic talent, but obviously you can tell it sounds really strong, right? Especially with how low SP cost his skills are. In which we should actually go through the skills. So this is a rough idea, but I would even if you do pull Chongyue, I would recommend most of us just only M3 skill 3. So Chongyue's first skill is a attack to gain SP skill. So he can charge 3 charge of it, and at M3 it will only cost 3 SP. So once you it is a manual activation skill, so once you activate the skill, Chongyue will immediately deal damage equivalent to 400% of his attack as physical damage. And if his skill charges 3 charges, so all like max amount of charge, you can immediately use all of them and deal the like equivalent amount of times of hit. So with 3 charges, he can do 3 hits of 400% immediately. So just once, you don't have to activate it 3 times. So that's good or bad, depends on you. I don't really think that's really like that important, but you know, it's an interesting skill nonetheless. I just don't think it's going to be useful enough for you to M3 it. At skill level 7, 290%. I think it's enough if I really want to use it, because I don't use it. It's skill 3. So his skill 2 is actually one of the more interesting skills. So it is a auto recovery skill, and it is also manually activated. So once you activate the skill, it will deal 450% of his attack as physical damage to at most 4 enemies surrounding him. And there's a 65% chance, or 23% chance for the enemy to take more damage from his talent 1. Now, if that talent applies to the enemy, that will also levitate the enemy. And after 2 seconds of levitation, he will also force all enemies that are levitated Just like no matter if they're levitated from his skill or not, to end their levitation state and drop to the ground, activate first talent 100%, so absolutely like guaranteed to deal extra damage and deal up to 650% of his attack as physical damage. So to put it simply, there's two hits of his attack. First hit is knock 4 people up. Second hit is everyone that's floating, knock them down and deal a huge damage, basically. And you can charge this skill twice. And at M3, that's also only 10 SP for each charge. Now, this skill is really interesting because his first part of it, like the first hit of his skill, can also hit aerial units, which is really interesting. But also you can actually pair this skill with other operators that can levitate enemies, like Irene or like other float. I think there's a 5-star caster that starts, his name starts with Q, but I can't really pronounce his name, so I'm just gonna let that be. He can also have 7 seconds of like levitation. So there's a lot of ways to levitate enemies, and then with Chongyue's skill too, you can just knock them down all at once to deal tons of damage. But that's about it. That's about it, because it is only one hit, and you know that one big hit obviously is very impactful, but that's also about it. And it takes like 10 seconds to charge once. Compared to his skill 3, I think it's not as impressive, and I haven't really seen a situation where you would actually want to pair him with another operator that can float the enemy up. Haven't seen that situation, so probably you don't have to M3. Now, skill 3 for Chongyue. This is probably the most, like the best skill, and the skill that most people would M3, and there's a reason to it. At the end of 5 activations, he will transform and then automatically activate the skill. So the first 5 charges, you have to manually activate it. But after that, he will automatically activate it. And it's really like hands-free experience, right? Also, you thought. Oh, I forgot to explain the skills, right? So once you activate the skills, Chongyue will deal an AoE damage equivalent to 380% of his attack as physical damage. And after you use his skill 5 times, which by pure calculation, it is 40 SP, Chongyue's attack range increases to a cross, and his attack becomes double hits. And his skills will automatically be casted and deal an extra damage. What does that mean is basically every time he uses his skill, it is a 2,500 times 2, 5,000 base attack. Obviously, the 2 attacks the 2 hits has to separately calculate the defense. And that's the thing. A lot of people think this is a strong skill. So do I. But don't forget, you have to charge this skill 5 times. The first charge requires 8 hits. If you use his skill to kill an enemy, that will work with his second talent and make the second charge require only 5 SP. So if you do the calculation, if you want to charge his skill 5 times, minimum, you will want 28 hits on a normal enemy. Now, and well, that's up to 40 obviously, because if he doesn't kill. So it takes a long time to charge and a long of time for enemies to come through. So think of thorns. Have you guys realized that recently we haven't really been using thorn skills as much? Well, solely because we don't really get the time for him to charge up and he's already dead. That kind of like works with Chongyue as well. See, his squishy, he only blocks 1, and you have to use his skills so many times. So most of the times you will want other operators to pair with him to help block the enemies and to heal him, because obviously he doesn't have the HP heal. So if you want to utilize Chongyue, you will need a lot of operators to work with him. Unlike Mountain, which is just block down. Obviously they play completely different role. I would say Mountain is just like I would basically use Chongyue as a vanguard kind of position and just block one entire lane, and Chongyue is more like use skill 5 times and AFK, just like Blaze skill 2 somewhat. And And actually we do like replace, we do use them like interchangeably. So we sometimes do, we like, okay, this place I can use Blaze, whereas most of the times Chongyue does basically the same job. But that's where it comes in, right? If Blaze and Chongyue does the same job, then why do I have to pull him if I already have Blaze? Obviously, that's, I'm assuming most of us already has Blaze or whatnot. So if you don't have Blaze, then go ahead, pull Chongyue. I wouldn't stop you anymore. But if you already have Blaze leveled up, you have Mountain leveled up, you have Thorn leveled up. Like if you already have 2 of them leveled up, raised, 2 out of 3 raised, then I wouldn't really recommend Chongyue to you because they play the same role. You're not expecting Chongyue to bring you anything new. If you're new to the game and you don't have like two of those minimum, then Chongyue is probably a really good pick for you. So that's about it for why I really wouldn't recommend Chongyue. But there is one other thing about him. So I know that there will be one limited event. So it's a 3-week event-ish where Chongyue will play a huge role. He is probably the best operator in that event. But that is one event for the next coming 6 months. So if you think that you want to spend all your pulls despite there's a lot of good operators coming down the line, if you really think that you just want to be so good at that event that will be gone in 3 weeks, then you can go ahead and pull him as well. I would not stop you, but that is just not what I would recommend. Now, our next operator is Lin. This is a very hard operator to talk about because personally I'm a huge fan of him. I really like her design, right? Back when she showed up in this PV in the summer event, I really liked her. And then we saw the animation PV around in this event, and we were really excited. Like, oh, maybe she's going to be a arts caster or arts guard or something, because she was just wielding the sword and whatnot, right? But she ended up being a caster, so it is what it is. So Lin, as you can see, is a Carnelian type of caster. So in their archetype, they basically don't attack when they don't have their skill activated. They have really high defense and resistance when their skills aren't activated. And basically, they're kind of hard to use because you have to time their skills properly for them to like be utilized properly, because you can't just like waste your skill and then they go into a long cooldown. That basically works for Lin as well. So I'll go through all of her kits and explain how, if you do choose to pull for Lin, how you would utilize her. And obviously, if you really want to use her, I would recommend module level 3 because there's a huge improvement in that, but that's coming down the road. So Lin's first talent is that she has this barrier, right? And this barrier will always be there and absorb all the damage she takes unless it takes over 200 attack. Now, when that shield shatters, breaks, it will immediately deal all AoE damage to all surrounding enemies equivalent to 100% of Lin's attack and stuns them for 1 second. And the shield will regenerate after 8 seconds. So this sounds like a really good skill. This sounds like a really good talent to counter those bosses that has multiple hits, like a ton of hits, like 500 hits per second, which deals a ton of damage in total. But because each of those damage is not dealing over 200 damage to Lin, then she would just nullify all of those. Also, it will perfectly counter all the damage over time from the maps that has poisons and whatnot. That will perfectly counter that. And her second talent is that when Lin takes damage, there's a 50% chance to recover 1 SP. And that is pretty good, because if you think about the use case of these type of operators, you're mainly using them to tank the damage when their skills are down. right? So this actually works really well with the archetype. And if you have module upgrade down the road, this will actually increase to 75% chance and recover 2 SP, sorry, 75% chance and 2 SP. Like, it becomes really good if you have the module level 3. And that is why I would highly recommend module level 3 for all of those people who wants to use Lin. And at that point, she actually becomes really decent, where I could recommend most people to use, but the investment that you have to put in is quite large. Now, let's talk about Lin's skill. So, Lin's skill is allows her to change between different states. So you can roughly think of mountain skill, right? You can change between block 1 or block 2. Similar to this, you can change between a normal state where she just doesn't attack and have really high resistance defense, or she can turn into the phase where she will have roughly slightly increased attack interval, plus 60% attack, and attack will slow the enemy down for 1 second. So you can think of this as permanent, well, not permanent, like always on a skill where she keeps attacking and it will always slow the enemy. Think of supporter, but AoE, right? You're a slow supporter, but AoE. That's basically what this skill is. And I did choose to level it because M3, well, skill mastery does allow the slow to increase from 0.9 seconds to 1 second. 0.1 seconds, if you want it or not, that's up to you. I think it's worth it for me, but if you don't think it's worth it, you don't have to M3 this skill. I just did it because I don't know what I was thinking back then. Now, Lin's second skill is actually way more interesting. So during the duration of Lin's skill 2, she will have plus up to 130 attack speed. She will be less likely to be attacked by enemies. So think of your Mizuki, less likely to get hit by enemies. So opposite of Taunt. And during the skill duration, all ally units within her attack range will get the shield that she has. So if you think about it, you know those poison maps where I mentioned that her first talent has the shield that can just perfectly counter all of them. All ally units within her attack area, which is actually not small, can share the shield. So she will allow a lot of operators to ignore the poison. And that is not bad. But the thing is, I don't really see a point to skill mastery 3 this, because a bit of attack speed with her attack really isn't that much, and the duration doesn't really increase, and I just don't see the point in M3ing this skill. So I think this skill is fine if you want to just want to grab her to counter one of those maps, which I haven't really seen a stage where I really feel like they need to, because AoE medic basically does the job as well. But it is a skill that you can utilize in that sense. Now, the true skill that everyone must care about is Lin's skill 3. So, during Lin's skill 3, she will have plus 200% attack. Her attack range is increased on all sides. So you can think of Carnelian skill 3 with second charge, so the increased attack area. And the shield breakage limit is tripled. So usually the shield takes 200 attack to shatter. Now it takes 600 attack, 600 damage to shatter. And that means that increases her survivability. And also, whenever she kills an enemy with her attack, her shield will immediately shatter and immediately form back up. So remember, her skill, her talent is that if her shield breaks, she will deal 100% of her attack as arts damage, and that's tripled, so that's 2,700 damage, arts damage, and stun enemy for 1 second, and her shield will immediately be regenerated again. So that is a very strong skill if you think about it in that sense. But there is a reason why I don't recommend her. So as you can see, with her base attack as at 900-ish and tripling her attack with skill 3 activation, that's about 2,700, about 2,700 to 2,800 attack, and that's arts damage. And do you guys remember a trend recently where, oh, for some reason, enemy all have 50 resistance, 80 resistance, 90, 100 resistance? In those situations, Lin really can't kill enemies. She will have a really hard time when it comes to killing any enemy. And so the whole shattering effect of her shield just doesn't occur. Then her whole skill 3 just kind of crumbles and just kind of pointless. Now, that being said, I still really like her because of one thing. Remember how I mentioned that her first talent allows her to take 200 damage? I didn't say if enemy have 200 attack. I said Lin takes 200 damage. That means that damage has to go through your defense calculation and all your resistance calculation before the 200 is calculated. So let's say if Lin has, like, I don't know, typically during skill downtime, she would have plus 35 resistance, and you can cross off that 35% resistance from the arch damage, like arch damage is taking, then do the 200 damage that absorbs. And even if the enemy does an attack that kind of breaks the shield, right, that damage calculation still has to minus that 200. So the shield breakage will also absorb damage even if it breaks the shield. So in general, this is a very well thought out kit, in my opinion. I think her skill set is just really well designed. Her talent, both of her talents work really well with her skill set and her archetype. It just comes down to the point that the archetype itself is hard to use, and hence that makes the whole package feels kind of weak. So if you must use Lin, I would highly recommend get her module to level 3. That will greatly assist, like greatly improve her damage capability, her survivability, and her skill like cooldown as well, because it does take 50 seconds to charge if you don't have the module. Well, obviously you still get the 50% chance, but 50% chance to regenerate 1 SP versus 75% chance to regenerate 2 SP. I think that's a very clear like improvement. And so that is probably why I really wouldn't recommend you to pull Chongyue and Lin. It's just that both of these operators, they look good on paper. They look really good on paper. It's just that when you actually put them into the battlefield, you just realize that they're not really doing much. And they're not really bringing much to the table, right? They seem unique, but they're not that unique. So in the end, obviously, it is up to you guys if you want to pull this banner or not. I know I definitely will be. Like I said every time, like even though I'd say I recommend you guys not to pull, I will still pull. So if you really want to try them, you can probably add me on as a friend on my account, and you can probably just experience them, because I can probably just put them up there and you can just come to my Discord and ask me to put them on support. You guys can try them out that way and then decide if you want to pull in, go in and pull. So that's about it for this video. I'm sorry it took a bit longer, because there's just so many like complicated mechanics and reasonings behind like why I don't recommend pulling these operators, and I really want to convince you guys, because I know like most people would want to pull a limited banner. So that's that. I guess I'll see you guys in the next one, which hopefully is my pulling video. I forgot to record my read auto pulling video, so that thing is just disappeared. I hope I don't make that mistake again, and I'll see you guys then. Bye.